are the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Post Justice Hunters. Today, big dogs, I have comprised a tier list of some of the most powerful and popular decks, and I'm going to be giving you insight on my hours and hours and hours and hours of testing in the Justice Hunters format on what decks are the best. As always, big dogs, I'm going to be breaking down my logic and reasoning for these decks being where they are, and I want you guys to post down below in the comment section, what do you think will be the strongest decks post Justice Hunters? Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all, big dog? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. The best Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks post Justice Hunters. I know some Yu-Gi-Oh! Players that think this set is going to be huge. I know some Yu-Gi-Oh! Players that actually think this set is going to be a flop. My honest opinions coming into this set, it's in a little bit between both. While this set does introduce Yummy as an almost exclusive archetype, Dragontail as a deck that can be played pure, or as an engine with decks like Dragon Maid or Branded, and then K9, which is almost exclusively a Yu-Gi-Oh! Engine to help boost strategies. These are not going to be the end-all, be-all of the entire meta. After over 100-something hours testing with the boys, as well as talking to some of the top players, these are my thoughts on the best or most played Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies coming into the meta. Let's start off with Maliss. Maliss is the modern day Branded of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Meta, a deck that is strong enough to compete, strong enough to contend, but not strong enough to consistently take the biggest prize home. It's a deck that's often regarded as one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! But has really solid counters that make it a fair Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck to play against. A lot of people would say that this is one of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm gonna make my first bold take and just say it's not it. Justice Hunters actually has a lot going against Maliss. Not only do other Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategies start to get the power that they deserve to be able to compete, Maliss gets absolutely nothing from this set. And in the ever-growing power creep in the modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Era, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. Still though, a solid contending Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck that can easily top and win regionals here and there, and even top some of the highest level events. I want you guys to remember that sticking point as we go through this list, because Blue Eyes is another Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy just like it. Blue Eyes also does not get better from Justice Hunters, and is already starting to show signs. This is a deck that if a player piloted correctly, they can get pretty far. But as far as taking home the biggest bacon, that has not been happening. Kaiba would 100% not be proud of most Blue Eyes players, but this is pretty much Kaiba's arc. A deck that is really powerful, incredibly simple to use at times, but could never beat the Yu-Gi-Motos in the game. I'm gonna say that this deck is good and stable. Now, I wanna make it abundantly clear that every single Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy that is going to be placed on this tier list is pretty strong, unless you're Justice Prey. Please be a Justice Hunter, not Justice Prey. Those decks, I don't think there's much of a chance. But this tier list pretty much symbolizes the ease of being able to win in the current Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. Mitsurugi! Now, there are a couple of things that are true about this Yu-Gi-Oh! Strategy. One is that this is one of the best TCG exclusives of all time. Two is that it easily plays into K9 shenanigans. I actually think that Mitsurugi got better because some of the other strategies got worse. With Ame being able to summon itself on the opponent's turn and wipe the opposing board, that's actually a really useful ability coming into Justice Hunters. In fact, one of the only reasons why Maliss is still really good is because of Topologic Bomber Dragon. But where Mitsurugi takes it up a notch is its versatility. This strategy can be pure, it can be Ryzeal, it can be Orcust, it can be so many other decks that have also gotten support. It's easily still one of the best decks in the entire game. Now, K9 is going to do a lot of things in Yu-Gi-Oh! And matter of fact, we might as well just talk about K9 right now as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck. K9 is really good at being able to punish the opponent when they activate monster effects in the hand or graveyard. But what if they don't? Well then, you can normal summon them. Effectively, what players have been doing is mixing K9 with the Fiendsmith engine, because if you don't interact with the Fiendsmith engine and they go full combo, well, there's a Wave King Caesar or a Desiree on the field, and if you do, well, your K9 cards are live. This is one of the many of things that the TCG has that the OCG doesn't, which allows this deck to be fully functional off the the bat right on its own. I think the K9 pure version of this deck is good and stable. I want to reiterate that this is for a pure K9 or even a Fiendsmith K9 variant. Yeah, you can do all of those crazy things, but if players are preparing for K9, they're not really going to interact with you. In fact, they're playing tons of board breakers, cards that completely obliterate what you were trying to do while also being able to play around K9. K9 is a very strong strategy, but only becomes the strongest when you're playing a supplemental strategy that needs to be countered, or that has a benefit so great that it meshes well with the K9 cards if your opponent isn't countering you. And that's why I think that the pure or Fiendsmith version is so low. But the Crystron version of K9, this deck actually has the potential to take over as one of the strongest version of K9s. But for right now, I'm gonna put it in solid choice, and I'm gonna rank it above Maliss. Now, normally I don't put these strategies in order, but I do want to talk about K9 Crystron. It is insane. Crystron has always had the ability to make hand traps look silly, but now they look even sillier. And seeing that Crystron has always been a board breaker style Yu-Gi-Oh deck, the K9 monsters add another layer of complexity for the strategy to be able to do just that. I genuinely would not sleep on K9 Crystron if I were you guys. It is going to be a scary time for that deck. Let's move on over to Fire Kings, a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that has gotten less consistent every single set. Big dogs, I'm telling you right now, once we get a Fire King search card that allows us to add a Fire King to our hand and destroy a card on our hand in the field, we cooking! But I would say right now, Fire King is in a really bad spot. So bad that I don't even think it's high-end Rogue. I think it just might be Justice Prey. There's a couple of compounding things about Fire King. One is that they activate monsters in both the hand and graveyard. Two, there are players that are playing more counters to the card's effects in the hand and graveyard. But three, this deck has always been a little inconsistent. And that gets exacerbated when you start to realize some of the other Yu-Gi-Oh strategies that are getting more consistent. In other words, I think our chicken finally got fried. Now, the Goon Striker players are eating good, but I'm telling you, I'm calling the FBI the moment y'all say Ray is bang. This deck it's like the perfect format for it. Not only is Sky Striker officially a anime lore deck, the new support in the current format benefits it. It is a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that can easily go second and plays all of the board breaker cards you need to be able to establish itself. Easily, solid choice. Do not sleep on this deck. It's really strong right now. Burning Abyss, my boys, did get some pretty good support. The fusion monster, Lucy's Dusk Dawn, I think is incredible. But also, the monster that allows you to be able to search the fusion spell card are crazy strong too. That allows Burning Abyss to be able to cycle itself. I think that Burning Abyss is Justice Prey. Unfortunately, those TCG exclusives are strong, but not strong enough to allow Burning Abyss to be able to compete. This is still a mill and pray for the best Yu-Gi-Oh strategy, and if we're being quite frank, Tier Limit does it better right now, even right now. Ryzeal Onomat or Ryzeal Utopia is a strategy that is purely based on the X seeds. It's not going to use any of those Mitsurugi junks, and also isn't going to fusion or link summon with Fiendsmith, and that's probably one of the biggest problems with this deck, Justice Prey. For what we've been experiencing, the Ryzeal strategy can only get you so far in testing. While this version, unlike Mitsurugi or Fiendsmith, isn't activating a ton of cards from the hand or graveyard, it also isn't doing enough to be able to secure boards and make threatening plays. It's kind of like going into a gunfight with only a 22 in your hand. You can do something, but you could have obviously done better. Still though, I would easily put it over these strategies and probably say that it's more deserving of a high-end rogue status, but not better than the high-end rogue decks we're gonna put on here. Next is Memento. Memento actually does get stronger with K9. It already has level 5 monsters like Tatsunoko and Akihiron, which means that Memento combo can full combo and then go into K9. This is of course all thanks to K9 Ripper being generic, which is something they really gotta stop doing. This makes Memento easily one of the best decks in the game. This was a strategy that was already consistently topping events, and it's only getting stronger. Granted, Memento is one of the harder Yu-Gi-Oh strategies to play, but if you were to ask me, the hard work is worth what you're getting reward-wise. Now, Mermail is really interesting. Again, this is another Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that activates cards from the hand or graveyard, but in return, you get barrier water statue locks, you get Mulling Glacier hand loops, you have some pretty good board break. I wouldn't say that Mermail is good and stable just simply because you're playing into so much right now, but I do think that it's a really, really good deck. I'm gonna put it in high-end Rogue. Mermail may have not gotten any benefits from Justice Hunters, but it is no slouch when it comes to powerful Yu-Gi-Oh decks. It's overall a pretty solid deck that does face an uphill battle, but the benefits are worth it if you are a Mermail enjoyer. Now, this image is for pure Dragontail players. Big dogs, why the hell would you play pure Dragontail? This deck is buns, bro. Like, it's cheeks. Keep in mind, big dogs, that is for pure Dragontail. I can't stress this enough. The problem with pure Dragontail is that it just doesn't do enough. And that's kind of wild considering that it's just coming out this year. I love its ability to be able to fusion summon into powerful monsters, especially during turn 0. I like its interrupt abilities. Actually, I think it's a really fun deck to play. But as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck, not gonna cut it. I think the very lowest form of Dragontail would probably be Dragontail K9. That version is begging your opponent to hand trap you so you can use your K9 cards, which is the better part of the deck. And even the pure version using Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, I think is okay. Yubel, my boys. Yubel didn't necessarily get stronger from this list, but I think it's in the same spot as Mermail. It is a very solid Yu-Gi-Oh deck that can compete with the right players behind it. Of course, like Mermail, this Yu-Gi-Oh strategy does have its fair share of struggles, but the struggles aren't enough to keep it from being able to compete. Vanquish Soul right now is one of the best decks in the game. Hell, Vanquish Soul, in my opinion, is the best deck in the game. One of the interesting things about Vanquish Soul is that the K9 version plays into Nibiru. I want to mention that, but I do want to make a couple of bold takes. I think that one, the Paradise Smasher lock that people were trying to do, kind of buns. Now that is a take that can complete comeback and bite me at the end of the day. But the reason why I don't think that it's as powerful is because you have to invest 3 monsters to potentially lock yourself out of the game, where you don't need to do that. You're playing Vanquish Soul, it's the strongest deck. Or maybe I'm just salty out of all of the times I got Paradise Smashered myself. I can't really tell you right now. I think the best version of Vanquish Soul is just playing better Yu-Gi-Oh than your opponent, but of course, this deck is really hard to play. It's almost like Memento level hard. And with the deck already winning the European World Championship qualifier, it already has merit before K9. Primite as an engine, or maybe using it with K9, possibly even Dragontail, it's okay. I think it's actually pretty decent high-end Rogue. Primite Drill Beam is actually ridiculously strong. It is a board breaker style Yu-Gi-Oh card, but you do have to play normal monsters, which is where not sure if I want to do that. Normal monsters aren't necessarily terrible, but Dippity only does one thing. Dippity in the Fiendsmith combo. And Fiendsmith is okay. Easily though, with the right pilot and the right build, Primite is a threat. Now, some of these Yu-Gi-Oh strategies I talked about on my Rogue tier list a week before. This is a bit of an update or evaluation on how they would handle inside of the meta, where Rogue tier list kind of specifies on dealing with particular sets of cards players are using. This is going to be a head-to-head competition on what's the best of the best. But unfortunately, Labrynth doesn't really change here. I think that the new Trapaholic trap card allows you to be able to search cards like Different Dimension Ground. It also gets you into other cards like D-Barrier, or possibly even a Virus card, which could be good against a lot of the decks, but that requires you to set up and go first. That's not always happening. Also, your Labrynth cards do activate in the hand and graveyard, so oh yeah, that is good stuff. Not necessarily a terrible deck because it has so many good things going for it, but once this deck starts to get behind the ball in this current Yu-Gi-Oh meta, it will struggle. Now, I still think that Yummy is one of the best decks in the game, but if I had to rate Yummy, I actually think it's a lot weaker than I initially said. I think it's a solid choice Yu-Gi-Oh deck, and that's almost insane. Yummy has a pretty decent counter to K9, being a Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that doesn't activate monster effects from the hand and uses the Dominus cards to be able to stop your opponent from doing really good things like searching and activating monster effects on the field. But the problem with Yummy is that it isn't complete right now. This deck needs its normal summon to go through, and oftentimes it means it will struggle to go second. Also, like Maliss, this deck has super counter cards. Dino Wrestler Pankratops is a real threat against this deck. So are cards like Raigeki and Dark Ruler no more. If I'm keeping it so real with you, look at the top decks. Raigeki do be kinda cooking though, but you ain't here for me. You ain't here for me. That Vanquish Soul fill spell still exists. Next here we have Utopic as a pure Yu-Gi-Oh deck. And my brother, if the Ryzeal version is just as prey, this deck is not even justice, it's just prey. I think White Forest are one of the more powerful Yu-Gi-Oh strategies coming into this format, because if players play less hand traps and Droll becomes less viable, it kinda is less viable, this deck gets a hell of a lot stronger. I'm gonna put it in good and stable. This is actually one of those underrated Yu-Gi-Oh strategies in my opinion. If this deck pops off and sets up his negation board. It's one of the very few strategies that can set up an actual negation board. It's scary. Lunalight is another Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that I think is good and stable. Incredibly good at setting up its boss monster and making some huge plays, and Baguska is a real threat in this game. Depending on where the ban list comes at the end of August, we might actually be seeing a meta where some of these decks on good and stable are a lot stronger, and some of these decks are a little bit weaker, but who knows? And big dogs, you want to know what else is good and stable? Actually, I ain't gonna lie, it's the best decks, these Raven Wing sleeves. Raven Ring is the #1 sleeve in the entire universe, and it also just so happens to be the cheapest. Right now, we have a sale on version 3 sleeves as we prepare for version 4. So guys, go ahead and go to TheCaliEffect.com and purchase your sleeves today. Also on there are some incredible Yu-Gi-Oh mats that you need to check out. I even got some brewing for some of you players of these decks on this tier list. Orcust is another one of those decks that is just really good at what it does. It doesn't really get any benefit from the set, but Battles of Legends Monster Revenge helped it out a lot. I think it's another good and stable. Crazy strong Yu-Gi-Oh deck with a ton of interactions, and apparently I heard that Yu-Gi-Oh players have not read World Crown. That card's pretty strong. Punk has 100% carved its role in the Yu-Gi-Oh game. I think it's a solid high-end rogue Yu-Gi-Oh deck, makes some really powerful boards, and has crazy strong recovery. It's just not a deck that's really strong in going second. And now that hand traps are a lot worse, I think players are gonna have to figure out another avenue than to just shove 50 million hand traps inside of your Punk Fiendsmith deck. Gem Knight is still crazy. This deck is easily, it's solid choice. It might even be here. This is one of the best going second decks. Better than Sky Striker right now, in my opinion. And it's simply because this deck wins on that second turn. Nah, I'm not gonna lie, Sky Striker's still kind of scary too, but this deck is crazy. Now, I still think that Ryzeal Mitsurugi is one of the best decks in the game. I just don't think that it is the best decks in the game. Keep in mind, Vanquish Soul was given this strategy to hands before it got K9. Branded is 1000% up, boys. Branded Dragontail is fairly strong. I actually think that it's a little bit better than the high-end Rogue. I'm gonna put it in good and stable. The same thing goes for the Dragon Maid version, which I will be playing on Bull Challenge. To be honest with you guys, the gap between Dragontail and Solid Choice in these decks isn't really that big. And lastly, Cyber Dragons, my boy. This deck is actually crazy strong with the K9s now having a way to go first and can summon Cyber Dragons out of your hand. I'm gonna put it in a high-end Rogue. We all know that Cyber Dragon is one of the best anime decks of all time, and I might even give you guys an updated deck profile, so let me know if that's what you want to see. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching my best decks tier list. Of course, big dog, I'm pretty sure there are some things that you agree with or maybe disagree with. I can't wait to see what you have to say down below in the comment section, and I also can't wait for you to check out these videos so I could catch you on the next one.